Daddy! The scream cut through the Christmas Eve air like shattered glass. Marin Winslow, 6 years old, stood frozen on the snow-covered sidewalk of New York City. Her mittened hand pointed toward a bus stop bench just 2 blocks from the Rockefeller Christmas tree. Her voice cracked with terror. "Daddy, look! Her baby is blue! He's not moving!" Callum Winslow turned, and everything inside him went cold. On the old wooden bench beneath the flickering glow of a bus route sign, a young woman lay curled into herself. Her auburn hair was matted with ice. Her lips had turned the color of bruises. She wore nothing but a thin sweater that barely reached her elbows, but it was what she held that stopped Callum's heart. A baby, tiny, still, wrapped in a blanket so thin it might as well have been paper. The infant's skin was gray. His lips were not pink, not red, but blue. The blue of winter twilight. The blue of oxygen leaving the body. Callum couldn't move. 2 years. It had been 2 years since he'd stood in a hospital room and watched the color drain from his wife's face. 2 years since he'd held his newborn son for 3 minutes before the machine's flatline and the nurses took the tiny body away. Elise, his Elise, dead on the operating table. Their son dead in his arms. He had promised himself he would never feel that kind of pain again. But now Marin was tugging at his coat, tears streaming down her cheeks, and she was saying words that cracked open every wound he tried to seal shut. "Daddy, he looks like the baby in Mommy's tummy, the one who went to heaven with her." Callum felt something break inside his chest. He knelt beside the bench. His hands, steady in boardrooms and business deals, trembled as he unwound the cashmere scarf from his own neck and wrapped it around the infant. The baby's skin was ice. His breathing was shallow, barely there. "Miss!" Callum touched the young woman's shoulder. "Miss, wake up! Your baby needs help! Now!" Her eyes flew open. For a moment, Callum saw nothing but terror. Wild animal terror. The kind that comes from being hunted, from being hurt, from learning that the world offers no safety. The woman lunged upright, snatching the baby from his hands. "No, stay away! I know what men like you want!" Her voice was hoarse, cracked, the voice of someone who hadn't spoken to another human being in days. Callum raised both hands slowly, the way you approach a wounded animal. "I'm not going to hurt you, but look at your son. Look at his lips. He's hypothermic. If we don't warm him up in the next hour, he won't survive the night." The woman looked down, and Callum watched the fight drain out of her. The baby's mouth hung slightly open. His tiny fingers, poking out from the threadbare blanket, had stopped moving entirely. He wasn't crying. He wasn't fussing. He was slipping away, right there in his mother's arms. "I tried the shelters." Her voice broke. "They're full. I tried. I tried." Before Callum could respond, Marin stepped forward. The 6-year-old, with her golden curls and her pink snow boots, walked right up to the stranger and began unbuttoning her own coat. The coat her mother had bought her 3 Christmases ago. The last gift Elise ever gave. Marin draped it over the woman's shoulders. "You can have my coat," she said solemnly. "It has stars on it. Stars keep you warm." The woman stared at the child. Her eyes filled with something Callum couldn't name. Disbelief, gratitude, the first flicker of hope she'd felt in months. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you helping me?" Marin tilted her head, considering the question with all the seriousness of a philosopher. "Because you look sad, and Daddy says we should help sad people. That's what Mommy would do." Callum felt his throat tighten. Elise would do this. She would already be hailing a cab, calling doctors, taking charge. She had never been able to walk past suffering without stopping. It was the thing he loved most about her, the thing he missed most. He made a decision. "I own a hotel 2 blocks from here," he said. "The Archer. You can stay tonight. No questions." No strings. I give you my word. The woman searched his face, looking for lies, looking for the catch. But all she found was grief. Grief she recognized because she carried the same weight in her own chest. His name is Theo, she said quietly. Callum nodded. I'm Callum, and this is Marin. The Archer Hotel rose against the Manhattan skyline like a cathedral of glass and light. Doormen in long coats held open brass doors. Crystal chandeliers scattered rainbows across marble floors. The lobby smelled of pine and expensive perfume, and everything the young woman had forgotten existed. Her name was Rowan Sinclair. She was 20 years old. 11 months ago, she had been a sophomore at Parsons School of Design, a scholarship student with professors calling her a prodigy. She had a boyfriend who said he loved her. She had a future that glittered with possibility. Now she stood in the doorway of the Aspen suite, afraid to step inside. The room was larger than the apartment she'd grown up in. A king-size bed with a down comforter. A fireplace already crackling with flames. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city wrapped in snow and light. Theo stirred in her arms, and then he cried. It was weak, thin, but it was a cry. The cry of a baby coming back to life. Rowan sank onto the edge of the bed, tears streaming down her face. He's warming up, she whispered. Oh God, he's okay. He's okay. Callum stood in the doorway, Marin already asleep against his shoulder. He watched the young mother rock her son, her whole body shaking with relief, and he felt something shift in his chest. Something he'd thought was dead. You should rest, he said quietly. There's food in the minibar, warm clothes in the closet. Room service will bring whatever you need. Rowan looked up at him. Her eyes were red, her cheeks hollow, but there was strength in her gaze. The strength of someone who had survived things that should have destroyed her. Why are you doing this? She asked. The truth. Callum was quiet for a long moment. 2 years ago, he said finally, my wife Elise died in childbirth. Our son died with her. She bled out on the operating table. They couldn't save her, couldn't save him. He looked down at Marin, her small face peaceful in sleep. When Marin saw your baby tonight, she said he looked like her brother, the one she never got to meet. His voice cracked. I'm not trying to replace them. I could never replace them. But tonight I couldn't just walk by. Elise would never forgive me if I did. Rowan understood then. This wasn't charity. This wasn't pity. This was a man trying to keep a promise to his dead wife. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. Rowan woke to find Theo sleeping peacefully in a proper bassinet someone had delivered during the night. Her first real sleep in months had left her disoriented, unsure if the soft sheets and warm room were real or just another cruel dream. A knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find Marin bouncing on her toes, clutching a gift bag overflowing with red tissue paper. Merry Christmas! Daddy says you can come see our tree. It's so big. It touches the ceiling. Behind her stood an older woman with silver hair pulled into a severe bun. Her eyes swept over Rowan with the precision of a judge examining evidence. Miss Sinclair, I'm Mrs. Pemberton, the Winslow's housekeeper. Miss Marin was quite insistent about delivering her invitation personally. Rowan clutched her borrowed robe tighter. Thank you, but I shouldn't impose. Nonsense. Mrs. Pemberton's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Mr. Winslow has already prepared breakfast, and Miss Marin has been counting the minutes. An hour later, Rowan found herself standing in the penthouse, staring at a Christmas tree that did indeed touch the ceiling. Presents were piled beneath it like a small mountain. Callum stood by the window, watching the snow fall over Central Park. I have a guest cottage on my estate in Connecticut, he said, turning to face her. It's private, safe, fully furnished. You and Theo can stay there for 1 month while you figure out your next steps. Rowan shook her head. I can't accept that. I won't be anyone's charity case. Then work for me. He smiled slightly. I saw your sketchbook, the drawings tucked in your bag. You're talented, Rowan, more than talented. I need a designer for our foundation's charity gala. The theme is new beginnings. I think you understand that concept better than anyone. Before Rowan could respond, Marin appeared at her side, small arms wrapping around her legs. Rowan, my mommy used to say that angels send people to help us when we're lost. The child looked up with eyes so earnest they hurt to meet. I think you're the angel she sent for Daddy, because he's been lost since she went to heaven. Rowan felt tears spill down her cheeks. Okay, she whispered. 1 month. Later that morning, Mrs. Pemberton found a moment alone with Rowan. Miss Sinclair. The older woman's voice was low. Mr. Winslow has a generous heart. Some would call it foolish. He sees the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. Rowan met her gaze steadily. I don't intend to take advantage of his kindness. I'm sure you don't. Mrs. Pemberton's eyes were sharp. But I will be watching. That afternoon, while Marin showed Rowan every ornament on the tree, Callum's phone rang. He stepped into the next room, but Rowan caught fragments of the conversation. Victor, I told you, the answer is no. You can't threaten me with a takeover. A pause. Stay away from my family. The call ended. When Callum returned, his jaw was tight, his eyes hard with an anger Rowan hadn't seen before. She didn't ask who Victor was, but she filed the name away. The Winslow estate in Connecticut was everything the streets of New York were not. Rolling hills covered in pristine snow, a stone manor house that looked like something from a fairy tale, and set apart from the main house, surrounded by winter bare birches, a cottage that stole Rowan's breath. Stone walls, a wraparound porch, windows that caught the morning light like captured diamonds. Inside, a fireplace large enough to warm the entire first floor. Theo slept in a real crib for the first time in his life, and Rowan, standing at the window watching snow fall over the frozen lake, allowed herself to feel something she had forgotten existed. Safety. The first week passed like a dream. Marin visited every day. She taught Rowan how to make sugar cookies shaped like stars. She told stories about Mommy Elise, how she used to sing lullabies and make hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. Daddy doesn't sing anymore, Marin said one afternoon. Not since Mommy went to heaven, but sometimes I hear him talking to her picture at night. Rowan had started drawing again. She filled page after page with sketches. Marin laughing, Theo sleeping, the view from her window, and Callum. She drew him standing at the manor house window, looking out at the snow. She drew his hands, steady and strong. She drew his eyes the way grief lived in them, even when he smiled. In the evenings when Theo was asleep and Marin had gone to bed, Callum would come to the cottage. They sat by the fire and talked about everything and nothing. He told her about Elise, how they met in college, how she laughed at his terrible jokes, how watching her die had shattered something inside him. And Rowan, for the first time since everything fell apart, told her story. She had been 19, a sophomore at Parsons with a full scholarship. She had a boyfriend named Daniel who said all the right things. When Rowan found out she was pregnant, Daniel said he would stand by her. 3 days later, his phone number was disconnected. His apartment had a new lock. He had vanished as if he had never existed. Rowan went to her family. Her parents were strict, religious, struggling with debt. They had sacrificed everything to give her a chance at something better. Her mother's face went cold when Rowan told her, "You've brought shame on this family. Get rid of it or get out." Rowan chose Theo. Her family cut her off. Her scholarship couldn't cover childcare. Her apartment evicted her when she couldn't make rent. She gave birth to Theo in a homeless shelter 3 months ago, on a thin mattress with no one holding her hand. Christmas Eve was supposed to be just another night to survive, Rowan told Callum, until you and Marin found us. Callum reached across the space between them and took her hand. You're the strongest person I've ever met. On the 10th day, a black sedan appeared in the cottage driveway. A man stepped out, perhaps 55, with silver hair and a suit that cost more than everything Rowan had ever owned. His smile did not reach his eyes. "Miss Sinclair, Victor Ashworth, I believe you're acquainted with my competitor, Callum Winslow." Rowan stood in the doorway, Theo secured in his carrier behind her. "Mr. Winslow isn't here, and I don't know you." Victor smiled wider. "But I know you, former art student, disowned by family, living on the streets until Callum decided to play hero." He tilted his head. "Quite the story." He pulled out a newspaper. The headline, "CEO Winslow's Christmas Scandal, Homeless Woman Living in His Estate." "The board of Winslow Investments meets in 1 week," Victor continued. "If these rumors continue, Callum loses his company, and I win. Get to the point." Victor's smile flickered. $500,000. To disappear tonight, take your baby, and start fresh somewhere far away. Rowan stepped forward, forcing Victor back. "Mr. Ashworth, I survived 8 months on the streets with a newborn. I watched my baby nearly freeze to death in my arms." Her voice dropped to something cold and sharp. "You think I can be bought?" "Everyone can be bought, Miss Sinclair." "Then you haven't met everyone." Rowan's hand found the door. "Get off this property, now." Victor's smile vanished. "We'll see how brave you are after the board meeting." He turned to leave, then paused. "Ask Callum why his company's stock dropped 40% right after his wife died. Ask him who benefited most from that tragedy." He walked back to his car without looking back. That night, Rowan asked. Callum sat across from her, his face pale in the firelight. "After Elise died, I fell apart," he said quietly. "I couldn't function. I handed control of the company to my board temporarily." His jaw tightened. Victor used that window. He manipulated stock prices, spread rumors, tried to force a takeover while I was too broken to fight back. He's been circling like a vulture for 2 years. "And now he thinks I'm that weakness," Rowan said. "He's wrong." Rowan sat down beside him, her hand finding his. "Whatever Victor is planning, we face it together." She didn't say more. She didn't need to. Some things didn't require words. 4 days later, the reporters came. Miranda Vance arrived with a photographer slipping past security during a shift change. She found Rowan in the cottage with Marin, both of them covered in flour from baking. The camera flashes started before Rowan realized what was happening. "Miss Sinclair, care to comment on your arrangement with Mr. Winslow?" Marin screamed, diving behind Rowan's legs. Something inside Rowan snapped. She stepped between the photographer and Marin. "You will not photograph this child. She is 6 years old." Miranda smiled. "We have what we need. The article drops Monday." Rowan pulled out her phone and began recording. "For the record, you are trespassing on private property. You are photographing a minor without consent. Everything you say is being documented." She stepped closer. "You publish that article, and I will make sure every news outlet knows who paid you to write it." "Victor Ashworth, right?" Miranda's smile faltered. "You're bluffing." "Try me." They left. But Rowan knew this wasn't over. The board meeting was held on day 17. Rowan wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't a shareholder, wasn't an employee. She went anyway. Victor Ashworth stood at the front of the conference room, a presentation displayed behind him, showing headlines and photographs. "The evidence is clear," Victor was saying. "Mr. Winslow's judgment is compromised. I move for a vote of no confidence." Rowan walked toward the front of the room. "I apologize for interrupting," she said. "But before you vote, there's something you should hear." Victor's face contorted with fury. "Security? Let her speak." An older woman at the table raised her hand. "I want to hear what she has to say." Rowan took a breath. "My name is Rowan Sinclair. Yes, I'm the homeless woman in those articles. Yes, Mr. Winslow gave me and my son shelter on Christmas Eve." She looked around the room. "I'm not here to defend him. I'm here to tell you what I've seen. I've seen a man who still cries for his wife 2 years after her death. I've seen a father who reads bedtime stories to his daughter every single night. I've seen a CEO who designs charity programs at 2 in the morning because he believes business should serve people. She turned to face Victor. Victor Ashworth offered me $500,000 to disappear, to abandon the man who saved my son's life. I said no. A murmur ran through the room. You can vote however you want, but you should know who you're really choosing between. Callum's phone buzzed. Maren's face filled the screen, video calling from home with Mrs. Pemberton. Daddy, is Rowan okay? Tell her she's the bravest person I know, even braver than the princess in my storybook. The child paused. And Daddy, Mommy would be really proud of you. The vote was called 10 minutes later, 8-4. Callum kept his company. Victor was escorted from the building. This isn't over, Winslow, he spat. Callum's voice was steady. Yes, it is. But Victor Ashworth did not accept defeat. He made phone calls, hired investigators, demanded that Miranda dig deeper. The gala, he told her. She'll be there. And when she does, we strike. Miranda nodded. She had already begun assembling a new file. Medical records, shelter intake forms, anything that could be twisted into ammunition. The night before the gala, Rowan stood at the cottage window watching snow fall. Maybe I should leave, she said quietly. After tomorrow, go somewhere Victor can't use me against you. She felt Callum come up behind her. Rowan, look at me. She turned. His eyes were open in a way she had never seen. Vulnerable, raw. 2 years ago, I thought my life ended with Elise. I went through the motions for Maren's sake, but I was hollow inside. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. Then I saw you on that bench, and for the first time since Elise died, I felt something. Not pity, not obligation, hope. Callum, let me finish. He took a breath. I love you, Rowan. Not because you need me. I love you because you stood up to Victor Ashworth with nothing but your courage. I love you because Maren laughs again when you're around. I love you because you make me want to be the man Elise always believed I could be. Rowan felt tears slip down her cheeks. I love you too, she whispered. I think I have since you wrapped your scarf around Theo that night. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home. The Winslow Foundation Charity Gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Archer Hotel. 500 guests filled the glittering space. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Rowan stood at the top of the staircase, her heart pounding. She wore a gown of deep emerald green. Around her neck hung 2 necklaces, a silver sun from Callum, a silver star that Mrs. Pemberton had pressed into her hands that afternoon. This was Elise's, the housekeeper had said, her voice rough. She wore it to every foundation event. Mr. Winslow asked me to give it to you. Rowan had stared at the pendant. Are you sure? Mrs. Pemberton's eyes had softened. The sun for your new beginning, the star for the light that guides our family. Elise would have wanted you to have both. Now Rowan descended the stairs, and 500 faces turned to watch her. The first 2 hours passed in a blur. Callum stayed close. Maren charmed every guest she met. Then Victor Ashworth stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but you deserve to know the truth about your host's charity case. The screen behind him flickered to life. Images appeared. Rowan in the shelter, Rowan on the street, and finally a medical document with her name on it, stamped with a diagnosis she had never received. Mental instability, it read. Rowan Sinclair, Victor announced, homeless, abandoned by her own family, diagnosed as mentally unstable, and this is the woman Callum Winslow brought into his home, around his young daughter. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Is this the judgment of a man fit to run a billion-dollar company? Rowan felt the room spin, and then something inside her went still. She had survived abandonment. She had survived homelessness. She had survived watching her baby turn blue in her arms. She would not be destroyed by lies. She walked toward the stage. The crowd parted before her. She climbed the steps. She took the microphone from Victor's hand. "Everything Mr. Ashworth just showed you is true," she said. "Except one thing." She held up her phone, displaying her actual medical records. "I have never been diagnosed with mental instability. This document is a forgery. I have the original records right here." The murmur in the crowd shifted, became something darker, directed at Victor. "But you know what is true? I was homeless. I was abandoned. I watched my baby nearly freeze to death on Christmas Eve while hundreds of people walked past without stopping." She turned to face the crowd. The only person who stopped was Callum Winslow. Movement at the edge of her vision, small, pink. Marin pushed through the crowd and climbed onto the stage. "That man is lying," her voice rang out. "Rowan is not crazy. She's the nicest person ever." 500 adults fell silent before a 6-year-old girl. "She reads me stories. She makes me pancakes. She taught me that being kind is more important than being rich." Marin pointed directly at Victor. "And you're just a bully. My mommy said bullies are just scared people who want everyone else to be scared too." "Well, I'm not scared of you, and neither is Rowan." For a long moment, no one moved. Then someone began to clap. The applause spread like wildfire, filling the ballroom. "Get him out of here," someone shouted. Security materialized at Victor's elbows. "Mr. Ashworth, you need to leave. Now." Victor's face twisted. "You can't do this. I have lawyers." "You have forged documents." The voice belonged to the board member who had let Rowan speak. "Which is a federal crime. Perhaps you should consult those lawyers about your own exposure." They led him away while 500 guests watched in judgment. And then the silence broke. Applause erupted. People were standing. Some were cheering. A woman near the front was crying. Callum appeared at Rowan's side, pulling her close. "You were incredible," he murmured. Marin tugged at Rowan's dress. "Did we win?" Rowan knelt down and hugged her tight. "Yes, sweetheart, we won." After the gala, when the guests had departed, Callum found Rowan on the hotel's rooftop terrace. She stood at the railing, watching the city. Snow was falling again. "I have something for you," he said. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. He opened it. Inside was a ring. Antique. Elegant. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds. Callum knelt in the snow. "This was my grandmother's ring. Elise never wore it. She had her own. I think it was waiting for you." Rowan couldn't breathe. "Rowan Sinclair, you came into my life when I thought I would never love again. You showed me that broken pieces can become something whole. You gave Marin a mother. You gave me hope." He looked up at her. "Will you marry me?" The tears came. "Yes," she whispered. "1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he rose, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her while the snow fell around them. From inside the hotel, a small face pressed against the glass. "She said yes, Daddy, she said yes." 1 year later, Christmas Eve, the Winslow family stood before an old wooden bench near Rockefeller Center. Rowan and Callum, wedding rings catching the light. Marin, now 7, holding her little brother's hand. Theo, 15 months old, pointing at everything with wonder. A bronze plaque had been mounted beside the bench. The Bench Project, sponsored by the Winslow Foundation, because the most important journeys begin in unexpected places. In loving memory of Elise Winslow, the project provided emergency housing for homeless families every Christmas Eve. Not just shelter, but support, job training, education, childcare. This year, 147 families would spend Christmas in warmth instead of cold. Victor Ashworth had been investigated by the SEC for stock manipulation and fraud. His company collapsed. He faced criminal charges for document forgery and would spend 5 years in prison. Miranda Vance, the reporter who helped him forge those medical documents, was exposed. She lost her job, her license, and left New York entirely. Justice, Rowan had learned, sometimes moves slowly, but it moved. Rowan's gallery, Sinclair New Beginnings, had opened in Greenwich Village 6 months ago. Every month she featured artists who had overcome homelessness, addiction, or abandonment. Artists who had been told their dreams were impossible. A plaque by the door read, "Every masterpiece was once a blank canvas. Every artist was once unknown. Begin anyway." Mrs. Pemberton had cried when she first saw it. The stern housekeeper who had once warned Rowan not to take advantage had become something unexpected. A grandmother to Theo, a confidant to Rowan, a softened version of herself. "I was wrong about you," she had admitted. "I've been wrong about very few people, but I was wrong about you, and I'm grateful." Now the family stood together at the bench where everything began. "This is where we found you, Mommy," Marin announced. Rowan knelt down to hug her daughter. "No, sweetheart. This is where you saved us. You and Daddy." Theo pointed at the bench. "Home!" They all laughed. But Callum's eyes were bright when he looked at Rowan. "He's right. Home isn't a place, it's people. And I found my home on this bench 2 years ago." Marin tugged at Rowan's coat. "Mommy, remember what I said about you being the angel Mommy Elise sent?" "I remember." Marin's face was serious. "I was wrong. You're not an angel. Angels just visit." She wrapped her arms around Rowan's waist. "You stayed. You're my real mommy now. And Theo is my real brother. We're not just a family anymore." She looked up, her eyes shining. "We're home." Snow fell on New York City. Lights twinkled on the great Christmas tree. Carolers sang in the distance. And a family of 4 walked away from an old wooden bench, their footprints making patterns in the fresh snow, their hands clasped tightly together. Behind them, the bronze plaque caught the light. Because the most important journeys begin in unexpected places. Sometimes fairy tales don't start with once upon a time. Sometimes they start with a choice to see, a choice to stop, a choice to care. Sometimes the coldest nights lead to the warmest homes, and sometimes, just sometimes, strangers become family. Not because of blood, but because of love.